Junior Investigating Paranormal Society, first national paranormal organization created and ran by teens. Investigating for over 6 years, the team gives you a unique perspective on investigating the paranormal. They are now offering courses online or in person on investigating and developing your mediumship skills. For more information, contact John Covey at 540-560-9190 or email them at jips.pa@gmail.com. Participants must be 13 or older with parental consent. Welcome to Within the Chaos with your host,
Rodney Shortridge,
and co-host,
Robin Dalton.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. Excuse me. You can listen in by calling 516-387-1922, or you could go to the Vibe Radio Network website at blogtalkradio.com/Vibe Radio Network. From deep within the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for listening to Within the Chaos. My name is Rodney Shortridge, and I'll be your host tonight, along with my redhead Irish queen, Robin Dalton.
Hey, y'all.
Tonight, our special guest is John Ventre. John is a multi-state director for the Multiple UFO Network. It was John's research into end-time prophecy and the cultures that got him interested in UFOs in 1996. He is an occasional columnist for 7 different UFO magazines. John has made numerous television appearances, including Anderson Cooper Show in 2012 and over 50 episodes on 7 TV series, including 19 episodes on History Channel's Hangar 1 and 39 episodes on PCTV 21, UFOs over Pittsburgh. He has spoken at numerous UFO conferences and top radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM.
Couldn't hear you. You cut out there for a while.
I don't know what is going on with this host button, but the other show had trouble with it too. Yeah, anytime you hear me cut out, I can hear you. If I cut out, just go ahead and you rod me. So that way I can jump on it.
Well, we got on. We heard you up until the Coast to Coast AM.
Okay, well, John is a conference coordinator for the 3 Pennsylvania UFO conferences annually and has managed the 2014 MUFON Symposium. He is the author of 6 books. John can be reached at jventre1@comcast.net, and additional information can be found at his website at www.johnventre.com. I'd like to take a moment to remember a special man as my life and also my groups, came to know people in my group, my Uncle Alan Gross. He helped me and inspired me to start my paranormal group, Black Diamond Paranormal Society. He was an honorary member and a mentor of Robin and myself. He taught us a lot about the paranormal. He was very passionate about what he did, and he was very knowledgeable. Alan especially enjoyed teaching people about orbs. He had a huge fascination with orbs. Our hearts are saddened by his passing, and he will never be forgotten. Sending love and good vibes to his wife and children. We'd also like to take a moment to remember 2 other of my family members that passed this past week, my cousin Christopher Coxton and another uncle, Sonny Coxton. This past week's been kind of rough on both sides of my families with losing so many in such a short period of time. So, Robin, how's your week been?
Well, other than, finding out that Alan has passed on, it's been a pretty decent week. Can't really complain much. Getting ready to start my new job. So,
what are you going to be doing?
With that.
So, what's your new job?
Well, you know, and I don't know how many other people know, I just finished school, and I got my nursing assistant certification. So I finally found me a job here close to home as a CNA with Council on Aging. I will be going in and taking care of disabled and elderly people in their own homes. So it's a little different than the nursing home, but I still get to do what I love.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I guess I won't hold the guy back anymore. But it's my honor to welcome our special guest, John Ventre. Hello, John, and thank you for joining us tonight. How are you doing, sir?
Good, pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming on. We greatly appreciate it. So, John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, interestingly, most of the people I know at the Mutual UFO Network and other paranormal type people, they were into this really young, 10 years old, whatever, watched movies, read books. They were really into it. I didn't get into this until I was like 38, 39 years old, I started writing I started researching end time prophecy in 1996 because I wanted to write a sci-fi book. That's all it was about. And I got involved with UFOs in 98, and I'm still doing it. And the last 2 years, I started research in demonology, and my book is finally done. And, half the book is my own paranormal experiences that myself and my kids have had, and then what I include is everything you need to know about demonology and hauntings and stuff. And I think it's going to be one of the best books on that topic out there. But, other than that, I was an executive at UPS for 35 years, and I traveled all over. It was a big executive job, and the people there who know me, and now they find out, well, they saw me on TV on Hangar One or Anderson Cooper or my books. I can't believe you're doing that. Well, I am. So that's me.
Well, one question I'm going to ask you before we delve into more about the paranormal, UFO, and all this. How do you feel about the decision about Hillary Clinton not to prosecute this week?
Well, I think you see the long reach of the Clintons. They're above the law. As a matter of fact, just before I got on the show here, I was looking up. There was a quote in the Bible about the lawless one, and she is the lawless one. Everybody believes the Antichrist is going to be a man, but, her initials are HC. They could just as easily be AC for the Antichrist. I mean, that group, her husband sold out America to the Chinese. He also signed the legislation that caused the 2008 housing crisis because he made it where anybody can get a house regardless of their finances because he saw it more as a discrimination issue. They are just two of the worst people I've ever encountered. And, I constantly put on Facebook, never again a Bush or Clinton in the White House. We're 50% of the way there. You just can't elect those people. Their influence in the, meeting with the Attorney General and it is just disgraceful. If you or I did what she did as a supervisor at the FBI or the CIA, you'd be in prison. Petraeus got hung out to dry. She should have also.
Well,
so I guess I'm not voting Democrat.
Yeah, I got that. But don't you think that President Bush should have been held responsible for the 5 million emails that he deleted?
Well, Bush was terrible also. I was glad that the Brits the past couple of days they really put it to Tony Blair that Iraq was a needless war, and it is. And one of the things we don't look at is we spend $150 billion a year on the VA, but nobody kind of counts that. And we should probably be spending $200 billion on the VA. But the aftercare for our vets after we mentally and physically injure them, nobody really wants to account for that. And 1 out of every 3 homeless people is vets. Bush, there was no reason to go into Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction. This was an ego thing of him taking care of Saddam Hussein, for his father. So you spend $1 trillion, thousands of lives ruined as a family dispute, and that's a disgrace also. Plus, for a Republican, he went into his term with a surplus financially, for the country, and I've never seen a Republican spend like him. So, that's why I said never again a Bush or Clinton. They're both family lines are terrible.
Okay, that's a good point. Do you think this decision may have helped voters decide they're still on the fence whether to vote for Hillary or not?
Well, the staunch Republicans are going to get mad and vote anyhow for Trump. The people who love her are going to vote Democrat. It's hard to say with the people that are on the fence. I just saw something on the news. I was just on the internet a little bit before jumping on that they're reopening this thing with her emails. So I don't think it's over. Plus, they're also looking at the fact of whether she lied to the FBI. So I got a feeling the thing ain't over yet. I know there were hearings today. Comey was on TV and in Congress answering their questions. I don't think this is just going to go away like they want it to. And, and I also, Trump, I'm a big Trump fan because I grew up in New York and, but you got to understand New Yorkers, I understand his attitude and the way he comes across, but that's tough for a lot of people, Southerners, people in California. They're not used to that New York attitude. I grew up that way, so I fully understand where he's coming from. But, he's I wish he would tone it down a little bit because the patriotism is the thing he needs to talk about. That we have been so lacking in this country on patriotism. I wish he would just stick with that. Globalization was a lie. You can't have open borders, not after 9/11. And he should really stick to those issues and leave all of the other stuff out of it.
Well, what does patriotism mean to you?
Well, to me, it's America first, but, doing things legally. And what I saw, the first book that I wrote in, that one I was working on, that got me involved in this in 96. I published it in 07. It was really a Mayan calendar type book, but I set the world up in the future is what I did, in the book. And I must have wrote 5 pages on how we were being lied to about globalization. And there is no way moving jobs out of this country is good. And what the result has been is, this is a deal. There's some group there, I think in Germany and Central Europe, Soros, Angela Merkel, that are in cahoots with pulling jobs out of America, bringing America down. So what you got now are people fighting for $10 an hour jobs when they used to have a $23 an hour union job doing manufacturing work. So who benefits from this? Those jobs moved overseas, good for Wall Street, good for corporations. CEOs get $20 million a year, and what we have is your common person. Nobody in my family graduated college until my son. I mean, I had good grades, but I didn't have the money. You know, I went 3 years of college with a 3.8 in college, 91 in high school, but I didn't graduate. You know, those people who had high school and weren't professionals, you could still get a union job. You know, I worked at UPS. You can make almost $30 an hour. Where are you going to find those jobs nowadays? You're fighting for a $10 an hour job in Walmart, and you know, how do you pay the bills in the country when you don't have the tax base? So to me, to move those jobs out so that, you know, CEOs and stock prices go up and CEOs make $20 million, that's not America. That's wrong.
Well, shouldn't that be blamed, a lot of it, on the corporations because of...
Oh, absolutely. But you know what you find out? They're all in bed with them. You know, and people will say, well, it's the Republicans. But you know what? Clinton is probably more in bed with Wall Street and corporations than the Republicans are. That's why a lot of the Republicans prefer her over Trump, because they know they can work with her and she's going to be better for Wall Street, because he wants to take this on. He wants to bring some of those manufacturing jobs back. You know, there's such a trickle-down effect. I look at my aunts and uncles. Again, nobody graduated school, but they had they made $30,000, you know, but they could put their kids through college. They owned a home. They could take vacation. You're not doing that on $10 an hour. I could tell you right now, there's such a bad trickle-down loss. And they don't care. You know, what's his name, the guy, the Speaker of the House? He's probably one of the worst ones, you know, the Republican, right? And I can't think of his name.
Right.
You know, his goal is globalization. And I want to know, and I said this to my kids the other day, where was the speech by the politicians that were running saying, we're moving your middle-class jobs out of the country because we can get it done cheaper? You can save a quarter in Walmart, but you're going to make $10 an hour. I was making $10.73 an hour at UPS in 1982 before I went into management, and people would jump at that now, 36 years later. That's a shame, 34 years later. That is an absolute shame.
Oh, I agree.
I'd love to
I agree.
make that.
What was that?
Well, I know you said in your book you were kind of like, that you did the first one, you kind of took America into the future a little bit. Could you tell me a little bit about your end of times prophecy research that led you to that?
Yeah, you know, it was really interesting because, you know, I said let's base it on 2012, you know, and I was really writing it in the early 2000s, so obviously everything I talked about had to be moved in the future. But, you know, one of the things that the reason I got into UFOs is because as I looked at different cultures, they all talked about these beings from the stars or on flying shields, knowledge they got from extraterrestrials. That's the reason I got into UFOs. But I tell you what, though, you know, I tried to set the country up, and one of the things I did was that the United States kind of dissolves in the future. And I even continued it and wrote another book called Apophis 2029, which is America in 2029, when the asteroid Apophis is supposed to just miss us. And it's real. I'm not making it up. It's a 3/4-mile asteroid that's going to dip below our satellites and just miss Earth. But one of the things I did was 13 English-speaking countries, like the original 13 colonies, they join the United States, and the United States becomes more of a global power. You know, England is 4 countries, Canada I think is 6, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, they all basically the English-speaking Western countries. Even Nigeria, the southern half, which is Christian, joins the United States. The northern half is Muslim. They don't join. So like the original 13 colonies, the United States becomes the United States of 63. But one of the interesting things, you know, it's a novel, obviously. In that book, the character, I think it's on page 4, he's sitting there watching his favorite show, Switched at Birth. I wrote that in 2007, 2 years before that show came on ABC, and that's a fact. So, and there was about 6, 7 things that I wrote, they actually came true.
Wow.
That's amazing because my friends at work, my son, they all said, Dad, look at this. You wrote this in '07, and here's the show in '09, and other things that came true. So it was kind of, but you use your intuition and you try to, what would happen in the future.
Well, how long were you doing UFO research before you joined up with MUFON?
Well, I didn't. I did the End Time Prophecy in '96. I joined MUFON in '98. I published a book on the End Time Prophecy in '07, and I think I became Pennsylvania MUFON State Director in '06. So, and really from '06 on, I got really heavily into my UFO research. And I didn't publish any UFO books, I think, until 2011. I published in 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. I basically knocked out 6 books in the last 6 years.
Wow. I've been trying to write. I've been working on 2 of them for years, and I still haven't got them finished.
Well, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and because I didn't know how to format it, how to do it. That first book, I actually paid a guy $1,000. He was a playwright, and he had written stuff, and I said, I got 80 pages, and I'm kind of stuck right now. And, and I said, write 80 pages more for me, and I'll give you $1,000. And that's basically what he did. And once he formatted that first book, I figured out how to do it, and I did my other books myself.
Cool.
So,
but you need help. I mean, I would say that was the hardest thing I ever did was to write a 400-page book. Because what happened was in 90, when I started writing in 97, I wrote 80 pages, and I was done. I shelved it until I met this other guy at the gym, and he wrote 80 more, and then I was able to double it again. But, I actually put it on the side for about 4 or 5 years, and then I went back to it because I couldn't come up with any more thoughts or material. It was the hardest thing I ever did was to write that first book.
Well, my problem is I got it in my head. I can see it in my head, and I know what I want. And then it looks ridiculous when I get it, wrote, when I write it down or I get it typed up. I'm like, that don't sound right.
Well, I get so many ideas. I keep a pad of paper and pen next to the bed. And I get some of my best ideas when I lay down at night. Once I relax, these thoughts come in my head, and I keep jumping up and writing them down. And same thing, I go take a shower in the morning, and it's like, I got a great line. I got to remember it. The only problem is when you're pushing 60, you get 3 thoughts, and by the time you get downstairs to type them, you only remember one of them.
I have that problem now.
Yeah, it's amazing. If you don't write it down, you'll forget. I'm telling you, I keep a pad and pen right next to the bed.
Rodney?
Did we lose him?
He's having problems with the one of the buttons. The show before was having problems as well.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it's I guess it's the website. They're having trouble with the host button. I don't know why, but sorry about that. So what are the qualifications to be able to hold a tri-state director position?
Well, I was like, at one point I had 7 states, and which to me wasn't that hard because at UPS I was their state security and public affairs director for 3 states. I had Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia. Once you understand how to delegate and follow up, so when MUFON, I had Pennsylvania, and then they asked me, well, can you take Delaware? Can you take West Virginia? And then we lost the whole New England area, so I took 4 of those states. You basically just, what you do is you find good people that you can delegate to, and you follow up to make sure it's all getting done. But, I think to be a state director, you probably needed to have held a management position at some time or ran your own business or something. Because sometimes we get people that, they really didn't do, they might have had a manual labor job, let's say, like that factory worker, but they got a good interest in UFOs. But, I find that some of those people, as they move up and they want to be the state director, they just don't have the skills. They don't know how to handle people. They don't know how to delegate. They don't know how to handle certain situations. So, my recommendation is if you had any sort of management position or ran your own business or you've multitasked, then you can move up. But you don't have to be a scientist. Matter of fact, I hate science. And people ask me that. I said, I'm not a scientist. And they'll say, well, MUFON's a scientific organization. I say, yeah, I got people who like that stuff, and I delegate to them. And then they tell me what they found out. I'm not a scientist. I don't want to be a scientist. I think they're very dull. I think they're closed-minded. And with the stuff that they can't explain, they refuse to explain. So I don't want to be a scientist.
Yeah. Well, I know you're also involved in several charities like the Juvenile Diabetes and Westmoreland Economic Growth Connection, Rotary Club, and United Way, just to mention a few. What drives your passion for these charities? Was there anybody in your family or anything that gives you a little bit of passion towards these specific charities?
Yeah, well, what happened was at 4 years old, my son got juvenile diabetes type 1. So I've been involved with juvenile diabetes since 1988, with the walk. And here in Pittsburgh, I got on their board for 6 years. And then, the company would always push you to do some charitable work. So, a friend of mine was the Rotary Club president. She pulled me in, so now I'm the Rotary Club president. Matter of fact, I went and gave a talk today at the Rotary at lunchtime over in Monroeville over here. And, the economic growth, that was kind of a business one. They get funding for road projects and stuff. So, it really started with my son getting diabetes because, most people, they don't give money, they don't give time. But if you got a reason like I did with my son, once you start, then you do more. And, with the United Way at work, I became a Tocqueville Society member, which is really giving a lot of money. I donated, the minimum was you had to donate $50,000 in 5 years. And I think I gave $73,000 or $74,000, but I gave it all to juvenile diabetes. I designated it. So, and I was okay with that. I was making big bucks at UPS, so I didn't mind.
Wow. Well, speaking of UPS, I know you retired as public affairs director and all. So and you were also your company's liaison to your local congressman. So exactly what were your duties as liaison? I mean, how did you just delegate or?
Yeah. Well, what I did was we would meet with I think it was 22 congressmen and senators for the 3 states. And, there were certain things, information the company wanted to get in their hands. So I would just, follow up with our management people in the 3 states to make sure they did that. They had their meetings. It's actually hard to get FaceTime in front of a congressman or a senator. You may once a year actually get to sit in front of them and talk to them. But I became really good friends with my local congressman here. And, matter of fact, I just saw him last week. He had a fundraiser. And every time, and I saw him a few months earlier, he invited me to the Republican dinner here in Pittsburgh, and I sat at his table. And every time I see him, he says to the group that we're with, "Oh, John investigates UFOs," and you see the big smirk on his face, But I usually have something good to say about it or why it's real and this and that. But, when the Hangar 1 TV show came on in 2014, he texted me. He from his personal number, which he doesn't give out, he texted me and said, "John, when is your show on? What time, what channel?" So that was pretty cool. How many people get their congressman asking them, about their UFO TV show? But he did.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So was it difficult when to do your UFO research and all while you were working for UPS? I mean, that probably didn't leave you with a whole lot of time, did it?
Well, nobody knew I was involved in this. What happened was in November of 2009, we did the UFOs Over Earth show on Discovery Channel, and all of a sudden my phone starts ringing with the division managers and stuff at work. "John, I'm watching Discovery Channel, and is that you on television?" And I said, "Yeah." Nobody knew I did this until that TV show came out in 2009. And since then I've done a bunch of shows. I did the Anderson Cooper show in 2012, but I try to I would just keep it all separate. And there were so many different things I was involved in. I look at it now and say, you're retired and you're really busy doing all of this. I don't know how I did this working 50 hours a week. It was almost like I was so regimented. I had an hour for this, an hour for that, an hour for this, go to the gym, write my book for a half hour, and everything was so regimented. And, the time went pretty quick.
Wow. Well, I know you said you're not a scientist, but do you use any scientific tools for your research?
Nah, it's a lot of interviews, and I'll be honest with you. And as a matter of fact, I did, a Bill Burns radio show just recently. I think it was their wedding anniversary, and they wanted people to come on. And his wife Nancy made the comment to me, and it's very true. She said, "John, the books you write, the characters, they're you, aren't they?" And I say, "Yeah." I've written 4 novels and 3 factual books. I mean, the factual ones are factual, based on cases or whatever. But the ones that I wrote that were novels, the characters in there were me and my kids. So that was all personal type of stuff. But, this last book on demonology, I had a major demonic attack on me, started in November at Thanksgiving and lasted until April 20th. So it was 5 straight months of a demonic entity. So a lot of what I write there is factual and all my paranormal experiences. But the UFO books, like the Pennsylvania book, I mean, they're really, everything in there was just based on cases we did, the best cases in Pennsylvania. And all along, I had always kept like a little add-a-line of UFO facts. So then I wrote the other book, The Case for UFOs. There is stuff in that book that you will never come across anywhere. I think it's 256 bullet points, 1 or 2 lines of factual stuff in chronological order. And I've actually done presentations just on that part, and the people just are so hungry for the information because once you understand the timeline, you understand that something is going on.
Oh.
So does your books tie into the TV shows that you've done? Are they related?
No, not really. I'll put like this new book. I got some information on Hangar 1 and the previous book, Case for UFOs. I might have wrote 1 page that had to do with the TV show because actually the previous book last year, Case for UFOs, I think I wrote about 3 pages of all the background stuff that you wouldn't have known about the show because I was keeping notes, like an autobiography. So I was able to put a lot of factual stuff behind the scenes on the filming and what actually happened and, how we intended to do the show and how it ended up. There's actually a lot of good stuff in there about the TV show. It's just a shame that, History Channel dropped Hangar 1 after 2 seasons and decided to keep Ancient Aliens for season 11. And, I know there's a lot of Ancient Alien fans out there, but I just cannot watch that show. The first 3 seasons were good, but once they started saying, Da Vinci was an alien, Einstein was an alien, I just put it on the other night for 5 minutes, Saturday night actually, and there's David Wilcock saying Project High Jump, where we sent those ships and the troops to Antarctica. Well, there's David Wilcock saying, and they encountered a UFO and it, with its lasers, was cutting ships in half. I had to turn it at that point because I know a lot about Project High Jump, and that didn't happen. But, it's UFO entertainment that I believe gives the field a very, very bad name and makes a joke of it.
Okay. What is your opinion about some of the different types of entities that you either wrote about or came encounter with?
Well, the entities that I'm talking about more recently here are really the demonic entities. It's really you do a paranormal show, right? So you talk about everything: UFOs, ghosts, demons, all of that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was amazing that, I think in the UFO field, I know as much as Richard Dolan or Stan Friedman. I knew very, very little about the demonic side, like, ghosts, what's an elemental, all the. So, you really find out that there's three types of entities. There's ghosts, which are human spirits. They're here either with some unfinished business or they can't move on, almost like they're lost, or they want to see that loved one before they move on. But the interesting thing I found out was that, you can't exorcise a ghost. You could bring the priest in, you could bring the Pope in. You can't force a ghost out of your house. He has free will, just like we do. You can ask him to go to the light, but you can't force him out. Now, that's different with the demonic spirits. You have elementals, which are really from nature or animals. And white witches, Wiccans, they kind of call upon elementals. But then you got the inhuman spirits, and that was something I encountered in June of 14 and November through April of 16. Those are basically, angels and demons. Black witches call upon demonic spirits. A lot of times they can't materialize as a full human. Some of the body parts are missing. But, the other thing I found out was there are devils and there are demons. I had no idea that there was a hierarchy. I would say to people, even I wanted to ask a priest once, I don't understand what's an archangel. Well, how's that different from an angel? So, you find out, and I didn't know this, there are 9 different levels of angels and demons. Lucifer was a seraphim. That's the highest order. He was that pure light being. Then you had the cherubim, which are the guardians of heaven's gates, thrones, which carry out God's orders, dominions, who regulate the angels, virtues that perform miracles, powers that combat the fallen angels, and that's at level 6 powers. They combat fallen angels. Principalities guard against evil. And then archangels are actually number 8. They command God's army. And then there's angels, which are guardians of humans. So we become level 10, and I guess animals and stuff are level 11. But the interesting thing is that the demonic have the exact same hierarchy. I didn't know any of this, and that those first 3, that went with Lucifer, seraphim, cherubim, thrones, those are all devils. I don't know how many there are. Let's say there's 20, but all 20 of them are devils. I thought there was only one devil, and then the lower levels are the demons, and when you get the first level of is an infestation, when you start getting the noises, the banging, all of that stuff in your house, those are demonic angels, right? The next level is the attacks, the oppression. Those are demonic archangels, and the jinn in Islam would fall into that also. The possession occurs at level 7, actually, the principalities and powers. So, but the top 5 or so levels, they don't get involved in that. Although there have been exorcisms where it claimed to be Lucifer himself or one of those high-level devils. That doesn't happen that often. But I learned so much about demonology, and I put it all in this book. And I think it would really, really help people, if they read this.
Oh, I agree.
Well, I'm very interested in it. So, is there any evidence of demonic aliens?
Well, here's the thing. I spent all of this time, 18 years or so, researching UFOs. I think I put together, again, one of the best books on UFOs, The Case for UFOs, all the evidence, everything you need to know, quotes, documents, timelines, the best cases. My opinion now, after 2 years of demonology research and a personal encounter with these freaking things, which are absolutely malevolent towards us, I question a lot of the UFO cases now. whether they were extraterrestrials or you're dealing with this malevolent interdimensional entity, which is a demon. You know, and when you say demon, people roll their eyes. You say fallen angels, they roll their eyes. So I like to call them interdimensional malevolent entities. But, you know, I go back.
My tongue could say that.
I go back and, you know, I look at some of the older cases. Like yesterday, I had Nick Redfern on our I do a TV show in Pittsburgh. It's a half-hour talk show. And we were talking about the Albert Bender case from the 1950s. He was the guy that came up with the Men in Black. But now, from my point of view with demonology, this guy conjured up or brought in a demonic entity. He talks about the smell of sulfur. He was very much into the occult. When these Men in Black showed up, they were very ghoulish with shiny eyes. I don't believe for 1 minute that what he brought in was ETs, although he said they were and all of that. They weren't. You look at the case, the two cases in West Virginia, because I used to be the state director in West Virginia, the Flatwoods case and the Mothman, right? You look at Mothman, you got this man-sized bird with wings and red eyes. Well, what do you think that is? And then you got the Flatwoods case from 1952, which is they saw a UFO come down, but the being that they saw in the woods was floating above ground. It had a hood on. It had red eyes and a green face and claws. That's not an alien. So many of these cases, when I look at them now, and I when they say sulfur or the description, the hooded being and the black eyes, you know, the red eyes, I'm saying you're dealing with demonic entities here, and I think that is actually the majority. I think the ET and the spacecraft is the minority in this.
Well, if there is a difference in, you know, in the abductions, if they are or aren't related, I mean, what are some of the signs that you would say would be considered a demonic abduction or a alien abduction?
Yeah, and you know what I did in my book and in my PowerPoint presentation? What I did was, through all the reading I do, I came up with the markers of demonic possession and which ones also happen during a UFO alien abduction. And, you know, I'll just tell you the ones right now that happened during both, because it's a long list. In both demonic and UFO, you see white smoke or white orbs. You see a hairy creature. You have difficulty breathing, paralysis, or something going into you and coming out. You have lucid dreams where you wake up drenched in sweat. Your dog can become very agitated and provoked. Waking up at the early hours, like between 3 and 4, feeling that you're being watched or there's a presence in the room. Black or a smoky shadow type being in the corner of your room. Loss of time or memory. Some creature standing at the foot of your bed. They target you and members in your family. There are loud noises in your house, like pounding that kind of shakes the house. Somebody undergoes a personality change. There's telepathic sounds or images. Then you end up losing faith in religion. You either get faith or you lose faith in the church. You have electrical problems with the cars stalling. Happens in both. Out-of-body experiences, levitating. A lot of times there's some sort of sexual contact pregnancy or a hybrid child. You see a reptilian gargoyle or an incubus. There seems to be a hive mentality. Even with the demonic, they talk about being legion, that they kind of connected to Lucifer, and it's a hive mentality. And the most interesting thing of all is that both you can repel through the use of the name of Jesus Christ or whoever the religious figure is in your faith. And that's what really, really got my attention. I contacted Joe Jordan, and he was on my TV show a few months ago. And my shows are on YouTube. You can look them up, John Ventre or UFOs Over Pittsburgh, and they're half-hour talk shows. I got really interested in this. Well, why would saying, leave me alone in the name of Jesus Christ, repel the gray alien? It didn't make any sense. Joe Jordan has almost 400 abduction cases where the name of Jesus Christ repelled an alien, a gray. So then what I did, I started researching the grays. The first time the gray was ever mentioned was, I think, like 1896 in a sci-fi novel that they described him. But the first time a gray was conjured up and sketched was in 1918. And do you know who conjured that gray up?
Who?
Nope.
You'll know this name, Aleister Crowley.
Oh, my gosh.
The self-proclaimed Antichrist, demonologist, the most evil man in the world is what he would call himself. He was 100% into Satan. Think about this. He does this ritual, the Babylon ritual, whatever it was called, and he conjures up a being, big head, spindly arms and legs. He drew it. He made a drawing. It doesn't have the big eyes. It has more of a smaller eyes, small nose, small mouth. The big head, it is absolutely a gray. So now think about this. We have these UFO abductions with grays, and the gray is actually a demonic entity. I mean, and then I just went to Scotland. Get this, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I got back. I met with two of their big paranormal investigators there. That was like the highlight of my trip. I had a 4-hour lunch with them, Rich Ritchie and Brian Allen. And they were telling me about the Scole experiment, S-C-O-L-E, Scole in England. And I never heard about this. This is what the cool thing is. Every country has their own cases, and they're all the same. But they did a 5-year experiment from 1993 to 98 to contact the spirit world. And they used, there was like 4 or 5 who stayed the whole 5 years. There were mediums and psychics, and a lot of different people funneled in and out. But what they conjured up was a gray. In trying to attempt to contact the spirit world, they actually filmed it. They conjured up a gray. It said it would only deal with them if there were no lights on. They were sensitive to light. Think about that. So they conjure up a gray who only wants to communicate in the dark, and then he was able to move things, levitate things. It was your absolute demonic encounter with a gray. So I say, and I believe this 100%, the grays are demonic. They're not E.T.
Wow. I've never thought about them.
I've often, while we do our investigations, there have been times that we've got evidence and also seen sightings outside, you would say, is a UFO. And I've often wondered if there was some kind of parallel to aliens or and the paranormal as far as ghosts or spirits. And from what you're saying, it puts a lot into perspective.
And then you start looking. Then what I did, is because I started this whole thing 20 years ago with end time prophecy, so it was a lot of biblical type research. So I went back to that. I've come full circle over the 20 years. So now what I did was go back and I looked at what do religious people, theologians, say about UFOs, and it makes perfect sense when you look at the Bible, which was written, almost 2,000 years ago, edited 1,700 years ago, but they got it so right, the religious people say, when you look at the Bible, that we're going to be tricked. There's going to be something called the apostasy. Something is going to happen that's going to really pull people away from religion. And you really see it a lot now with television. I think I saw a stat that 40% of people no longer believe in God or in the devil. They don't think the devil's real. And that's probably 60%, because I read a third of religious people don't believe that demons and devils are actual beings, that was just written to scare people. But, they say that something is going to happen. It's going to pull people away from the church, and that thing is going to be disclosure. Think of Independence Day, not the movie where they attack, but let's say, and this is what I put in my books too, let's say you have something happen, like the Yellowstone supervolcano goes off, or the planet gets hit by an asteroid. Both those things are in my books. So you've got a global cataclysm. Now just think about a UFO showing up, telling everybody we can fix this. We can fix the acid rain from the supervolcano, and they do. What do you think is going to happen? Right? This is your disclosure that everybody wants. But the only thing is, they're not extraterrestrials. They're demonic. And that high level, Lucifer was one step below God. Nobody really knows how powerful he is, And I've read things that he could destroy the planet if he wanted to, but, God doesn't allow him to do that. So think about how we would be tricked. And then people would, of course, say, well, what do you believe? And they'll tell people their one world view, their one, world religion and stuff. And 80-90% of everybody are going to follow that. There's your deception. There's your UFO disclosure. And there's the trick. And there was that movie on just recently, Childhood's End, and the book from Arthur C. Clarke, where they show up, and when they reveal themselves, they're actually devils, and they tricked us. And I think that is going to be deception. I think the Bible's right. I've done a lot of work on it. It's a cryptogram. The truth is there if you know how to find it.
Wow.
Well, in your opinion, how does exorcisms fall into all this?
Well, the exorcism is an absolute real thing, and words have power over time, which is why a lot of the religious people were upset with Vatican II in 1968, because you now went from Latin to every language. You lost the power of these words. And when you say it in that original Latin and the words that have been used for thousands of years during an exorcism, they're extremely powerful. And, here's something else I found. I went to Roslin Chapel when I was in Scotland 3 weeks ago. I never knew this. There are musical notes on these tiles up on the east side of the Roslin Chapel, but two of them are missing. They're called the Devil's Chord. When you play these notes, it's that real ominous type music. They say like everything gets a very heavy feeling. It attracts the demonic. And what I found out was King Solomon's, and this may be the whole Da Vinci Code thing that he had wrong. King Solomon had the notes, the musical notes, the words, the correct wording to control fallen angels. They built King Solomon's temple, which is they also built the pyramids. They were not built by ancient aliens. Those ancient sites were used for ritual sacrifices. They were built by the demonic entities for their own purposes, and then the people that were able to control them through this frequency, this resonance, and that's what Tesla was working on. They were able to control these demonic entities like King Solomon, and that's how his temple was built. But the exorcism, I'm telling you, you don't mess around with it. The words of the exorcism have to be said by a priest, somebody that's very holy. And I say to my kids, because they're kind of upset about me getting attacked and then being involved in this and writing demonology, scares the crap out of them, and it should. But they go to one of those New Age churches with the bands and the big screens, and I view it as religious entertainment. And they say, well, Dad, why do you go Catholic? It's like so ritual. You kneel, you stand, you chant. And I said, you got to understand, these words are powerful. They go back for centuries. The Catholic Church goes straight back to Jesus, even though other Christian churches do too. But this is the oldest one, right, other than Jewish, let's say. They believe in confession. I find it very interesting, and I read a lot of books, case histories on exorcism. These demonic entities can see your unconfessed sins. So Catholic's important because when you go to confession and you really regret the things you did, you're forgiven of those. Demonic entities can't see those. And every time there's a confession, an exorcism, those entities blurt out what the helpers in the room have done wrong to show their own power. So that's important. And the other thing is the Catholic Church is really the only one who does the exorcisms now. They support the International Association of Exorcists, which is 250 exorcists. And here's an interesting fact. Prior to 1990, there were only 6 exorcisms a year on average. From 1990 forward, they've averaged 1,300 exorcisms a year. Something is changing, in this planet, in this dimension or whatever. So to me, exorcism is extremely important, and I believe this stuff 100% because I experienced it.
Well, with what you experienced, did you all have to go through an exorcism?
No, because it didn't take me, although it tried. It was a progression that started, it showed up, which got me very concerned. It showed up on my 20th anniversary of my divorce. Think about the coincidence there. My wife's whole personality changed when we moved to Oklahoma, and then we ended up getting divorced in New Jersey. So it shows up on the 20th anniversary. That's not a coincidence. Then I met this woman. She kind of did the prayers, the holy water, and it didn't come back for almost a year and a half. But that's when I started all my research. When it came back, it was the most unbelievable thing. I mean, people would come over. For 18 months straight, there was a bunch of cardinals, red cardinals, that would fly and smash into my windows. They would constantly hit into my windows. That's that vibration, that resonance that these things from another dimension, the demonic, malevolent things give off. It throws off the birds. For 18 months, they were flying into my windows. There was constant tapping on the walls in my house. My son would come over, and I say, listen to the wall. He goes, whoa, that's, the heating ducts. I said, Nolan, the heating ducts are over there. You're listening to an outside wall. There's brick on the other side. How can the wall be tapping? And it would tap on different walls. You would get banging. I have a home theater with a projector on the ceiling. Something moved in front of the projector, the bright light, like a snake. It just snaked across the ceiling. My son, his wife, and I saw it move across the ceiling. Banging, you would hear actual bang. I had a picture in my living room. The picture lifted up off the wall. I have a couple of Indian headdresses. The feathers blew to the side. There would be creaking sounds and sounds like something sliding across the ceiling like a dead body. I was then, and then it got into the attacks. That was weeks of sleep deprivation. That's what they do. They're better than the CIA. It's sleep deprivation, and then they started the attacks, poking me in my leg when I went into my bedroom, actually poking me in my forehead. And then the night that they launched the attack, I did what the woman did. I commanded in Jesus Christ's name for it to leave. It all of a sudden stopped. And I laid down. I closed my eyes for about 20 minutes because you can't sleep. This went on for weeks. I opened my eyes. I'm in pitch blackness. And I looked around and I said, holy Moses, I've never seen the room so dark, and it all started again. I'm telling you, the loudest creaking and banging noises and sliding noises and popping sounds all around the room, and I did it more forceful, but what I added to what I said was, if you disobey Jesus Christ, you will go to the lake of fire now instead of at the end of days. And then all of a sudden it stopped. I actually saw a black veil lifting. The moonlight came through the windows, so for about 3 seconds I can see total blackness just lifting straight up. They were getting ready to launch an attack, and that's where the possession thing was going to try to happen. And I fought it off. You know, I really did. I go to church now. I wear a cross. I go to church every week. I say my prayers. I have rosary beads. And I've talked to people, the county commissioner in Pittsburgh, get this, the county commissioner who got the funding for both stadiums, for the Pirates, the Steelers, and the convention center. He had the same thing happen in his house, the county commissioner. And I'm telling you, this guy, he is so afraid. He carries rosary beads. He says the prayers all day. He does not want this to come back. And that's how I feel. You know, I'm going to fight this thing. And I know I'm just a human, but the coolest line you can say at night is, he that is within me is more powerful than he that is without. And that just puts a smile on my face, because I know Jesus is on my side. I went from a lapsed Catholic who didn't step a foot in church for 22, 23 years to kind of born again. And I like it. I'm happy.
Well, good.
Well, John, we got about 90 seconds left, so if you can, real quick, tell everyone if you got any projects you're working on or any events coming up, and how people can get in contact with you. And I do appreciate you so much coming on the show. We've got to have you back on.
Okay, yeah, I can talk about UFOs since we talked about demonology. But, you know, I do my 3 conferences in Pennsylvania, Erie, Pittsburgh, and Philly. You can find those at MUFONPA.com. And my 7th book on this demonology, which I think is going to be the best one out there that you can learn from, should be out by August 1st. And my other 6 books are all UFO-related, and they're at johnventre.com. Autographed copy from me, or you can go to Amazon and get the Kindle. But we have our 2 fall conferences coming up in Pittsburgh and Philly, October and November, and I do the Kecksburg conference, and you know I'm constantly doing radio shows. I do my own show now, liveparanormal.com, last Wednesday of every week. But johnventre.com, you can find out what you need to know.
Awesome.
Okay, John.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right,
for
thanks a
coming
lot.
on. You have a good night, sir.
All right, you too. Thanks. Bye.